If you had asked Lauren Mitchell to list her biggest fears, thunderstorms would have made the top three, right after losing someone she loved and being left in the dark, literally and figuratively. Tonight, all three fears tangled together as thunder cracked over the old farmhouse in Asheville, North Carolina, and rain hammered the windows so hard it sounded like 1,000 tiny fists. The lights flickered and fell, plunging the house into a shifting dance of candlelight and shadow. Lauren should have been in bed, hiding under the covers, pretending that the storm couldn't find her. Instead, she was frozen in the long, narrow upstairs hallway, her heart beating in her throat. She wasn't alone. Titan, her family's loyal black and tan German shepherd, was there, but not in the comforting way she expected. He stood rigid, hackles up, claws scraping desperately at the base of the old antique mirror that hung between the bedrooms, an artifact left over from the house's first owners. He never acted like this. Never. Thunder rattled the glass panes. Lightning illuminated Titan's frantic reflection, a wild-eyed dog lunging at his own ghost. Lauren took an involuntary step back. She watched as Titan's massive paws beat at the frame, then pressed his nose close, almost as if pleading with the glass for help. His breath fogged the lower corner, his tail low and trembling, a far cry from the brave protector she'd grown up with. Behind her, a voice cut through the electric tension. "What's wrong with him?" Evelyn's voice, her mother's voice, cracked, heavy with the exhaustion and rawness that had become all too familiar since Dad died. Evelyn hovered in the gloom at the top of the stairs, arms wrapped around herself, eyes wide as she watched the scene unfold. Lauren didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mouth was dry, her words caught somewhere between the need to comfort her mother and the certainty that something was deeply wrong. Titan barked, a short, sharp yelp that echoed down the hall and through Lauren's bones. His reflection stared back at him, unblinking, and for a split second, Lauren could swear she saw something shift in the glass. Not just their own scared faces, but something deeper, a flicker, a shadow. Her heart pounded. "Titan," she whispered, stepping forward, reaching out. He whined, pressing his head against her knee as if to say, "Do you see it too?" The storm outside boomed again, and for a moment the world felt smaller. Just Lauren, Titan, the old mirror, and all the secrets it might be hiding. She forced herself to kneel, running her hand over his thick fur, trying to steady her breath. Titan's eyes darted between Lauren and his reflection. She felt his body tremble beneath her palm. He'd always been the strong one, the dog who chased off stray raccoons and watched over her at night when she was little. Seeing him afraid made her stomach twist. Evelyn edged closer, voice shaking. "He's never done this before." Not once. She looked at Lauren, her eyes searching for answers that Lauren didn't have. The air in the hallway was heavy, thick with grief and tension. Dad's absence was a wound neither of them could speak about. The farmhouse was supposed to be their new beginning, a place to heal. But tonight, every shadow felt haunted, every clap of thunder a reminder of everything they'd lost. Lauren tried to focus, to think logically. Titan wasn't just frightened. He was obsessed, fixated on the mirror. Why? She flicked on the flashlight she'd been clutching since the storm started, aiming the beam at the frame. The glass shimmered with rain-reflected light, but something else caught her eye. Faint scratches around the frame, tiny grooves etched into the old wood. She touched them, fresh, splintered. Titan's work, or someone else's? A shiver traced down her spine. "Did you see these before?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Evelyn shook her head, swallowing hard. "No, maybe it's just the storm." He's scared, Lauren. He misses your dad, just like we do. Lauren pressed her palm to the mirror, half expecting it to be cold, but the glass was strangely warm. Titan whimpered again, circling, then pressing himself tight against her leg. Thunder boomed, the power flickered, and for a split second, the hallway was plunged into darkness. Lauren's heart skipped. When the flashlight blinked back on, Titan's reflection in the glass seemed different. His eyes, there was something almost human in them. Desperation? Fear? Was he trying to warn her or beg her to see what he saw? She forced herself to look closer. In the reflection, the scratches formed almost a pattern, an accidental constellation around the lower corner of the frame. Lauren's mind raced. Why here? Why this mirror? Titan had lived through storms, earthquakes. Even that time the kitchen caught fire. He'd never reacted like this before. She glanced at her mother, saw the fear mirrored there, and made a decision. I think, her voice faltered, I think something's behind this, or in it. Evelyn looked like she might protest, but the words died on her lips. Instead, she hugged herself tighter. Let's go downstairs. We can call someone in the morning. But Lauren shook her head. The urge to run was strong, but something in Titan's eyes, pleading, insistent, kept her rooted in place. I just want to check, please. She pressed her ear to the glass, half expecting to hear a heartbeat. Nothing. Only her own breath, shallow and fast, but she couldn't shake the sense that the mirror was holding its breath too. Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. What if it's nothing, Lauren? Then it's nothing, Lauren replied, but she didn't believe it. Not for a second. Titan whined and pawed at the floor, his tail thumping against Lauren's feet. The storm raged on outside, a chaotic symphony that seemed to echo the confusion and fear in Lauren's chest. She traced the scratches again, fingertips trembling. Titan watched her, not taking his eyes off the glass for a moment. In the reflection, Lauren saw not just her own scared face, but the outline of her mother behind her, uncertain and small. For a long moment, nobody moved. The house creaked around them, wind whistling through the old wooden bones. Lauren imagined her father's voice, calm, reassuring, telling her there was nothing to be afraid of, that Titan was just a dog, that mirrors couldn't hold secrets. But Lauren wasn't sure. Not anymore. As the storm reached its peak, lightning split the sky, casting wild shadows across the hallway. Titan let out one last bark, a sound so desperate, so urgent, that Lauren's resolve hardened. Something was wrong with the mirror, and Titan, for reasons she couldn't understand, was determined to make her see it. The morning after the storm, the farmhouse seemed to hold its breath. The air still smelled faintly of rain and old wood, the kind of scent that seeps into your bones and lingers. Lauren woke with a start. The memory of Titan's desperate barking and the strange electric fear from the night before pulsing just beneath her skin. Her hands shook as she slipped into her jeans and pulled on a faded hoodie. Downstairs, she could hear her mother moving around the kitchen, trying to find normalcy in a world that had shifted ever so slightly. Titan waited for her at the top of the stairs, tail thumping weakly, eyes never leaving her. His ears flicked at every creak and groan from the old house, but he stayed close, almost closer than her own shadow. Lauren paused outside the hallway, steeling herself. Sunlight crept through the curtains, making the antique mirror look almost ordinary again. But the scratches on the frame, now even more visible in the daylight, said otherwise. She glanced at Titan. You ready? She whispered. He whined, pawed at her leg, and turned his gaze back to the mirror. Evelyn's voice came from behind. Lauren, don't you want some breakfast? You barely slept. She sounded tired, older than she had yesterday. Lauren shook her head. I can't let it go, Mom. Something's not right with that mirror. Titan knows it. Evelyn hesitated. She looked at her daughter, then at Titan, then at the mirror, a frown digging lines between her brows. The silence stretched, thick and tense. Lauren made up her mind. Help me take it down. Evelyn's eyes widened. What? No, Lauren. That thing's been hanging there for decades, since before we moved in. What if it's dangerous? What if it breaks? But Lauren was already rolling her shoulders, hands searching for the old brass hooks on the sides of the frame. If there's nothing behind it, we'll put it back. Please, Mom, I just need to know. Titan barked, a low, insistent sound, and pressed his nose against Evelyn's thigh. Evelyn jumped, startled. Okay. Her hands trembled as she helped Lauren lift the heavy mirror off its rusted hooks, careful not to let the glass shatter. Together, they set it against the opposite wall. Behind where the mirror had hung, the wallpaper was a different shade, darker, older. But in the center, almost invisible except in the shifting sunlight, was a thin vertical seam. Lauren pressed her fingers along the edge and felt the faint give of a hidden panel. Titan whined, circling, tail low but wagging in anticipation. Lauren shot Evelyn a look. Did you know this was here? Evelyn shook her head, her voice a whisper. Your dad never told me about anything like this. She sounded lost, her grief raw and suddenly close to the surface. Her fingers hovered over the seam, uncertain. Lauren pushed. The panel creaked, and with a little effort, slid aside to reveal a hollow behind the wall. The space was dusty, filled with cobwebs and the scent of secrets long kept. Inside sat an old wooden box, its surface battered and dull, but the brass latch still shone beneath a thin layer of dust. Titan sat down, watching, as if he'd been waiting for this moment all along. Evelyn stared at the box, tears gathering in her eyes. Why would your father hide something like this? Lauren shook her head, heart pounding. Let's find out. She reached in and lifted the box out, setting it gently on the hallway rug. Evelyn knelt beside her, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand, trying to steady herself. Lauren opened the latch. The lid creaked on its hinges, and inside, cushioned by yellowed tissue, were a handful of items. A small bundle of old letters tied with blue ribbon, a faded baby's knit hat, and, strangest of all, a dull silver military dog tag that caught the light and flashed. Lauren picked it up, squinting at the name stamped into the metal. It doesn't say Dad's name, she said quietly, showing the tag to her mother. Instead, it was engraved with the initials J.W. Nothing more. Evelyn pressed her fingers to her lips, silent. For a moment, the only sound was Titan's soft panting, the hush of their breath, and the distant creak of the house settling. Lauren rifled through the letters. The paper was delicate and yellowed with age. She glanced at the dates, early 1950s, and the names. The letters were from someone named Grace, written to J.W. The handwriting was delicate, looping, filled with love and longing and the shadow of some sadness. Evelyn's voice was thin, almost afraid. Why would your dad have these? She reached for the baby hat, fingers trembling. He never. She trailed off, her grief breaking through in ragged gasps. Lauren wrapped an arm around her mother. Maybe he wanted to protect us. Or maybe he was trying to protect himself. Titan nosed at the box, eyes never leaving the dog tag. He let out a low, almost mournful whine. Lauren ran her thumb over the stamped metal, trying to imagine the man it had belonged to. The hallway felt different now. Less like a hallway and more like the entrance to a hidden world, a place where the past bled into the present. Evelyn broke the silence. I need a minute." She stood abruptly and hurried downstairs, the sound of her footsteps echoing. Lauren stayed, clutching the dog tag. Titan pressed his head into her lap, seeking comfort, giving it in return. Lauren sat there for a long while, reading one of the letters out loud, her voice shaking. The words painted a picture of a secret romance. Grace and J.W., longing, heartbreak, the mention of a child lost long ago. The emotion in the letters was raw and real. Lauren's mind raced. What connection did any of this have to her family? Who was J.W.? Why did Titan react so strongly to the mirror and this hidden box? Was it just coincidence that the dog in the photo inside the box, dressed in a military K9 harness, looked so much like Titan? Or was it something more? She tucked the items back into the box, except for the dog tag, which she slipped into her pocket. She ran her hand over Titan's head. "We'll figure it out, boy. I promise." Downstairs, Evelyn's voice was thick with emotion. "He never told me," she murmured. "Not once. How many secrets did he keep?" Lauren wanted to answer, to reach through the storm of loss and wrap her mother in something warm and certain, but all she had were questions. Titan nuzzled closer, his loyalty unwavering. Lauren realized in that moment that this mystery, whatever it was, would not let them go. Not until the truth came out. As dusk fell and the storm clouds moved away, the air in the farmhouse felt charged, as if the house itself was waiting for what would come next. But for now, all Lauren could do was hold tight to the fragments of the past and brace herself for whatever secrets tomorrow might bring. That night, the house felt different, heavier somehow, with the weight of secrets pulled from behind the old mirror. Every board seemed to creak in mourning. Every draft whispered memories of people Lauren had never met. In her room, Lauren sat cross-legged on her quilt, Titan curled protectively by her side, his broad head resting across her lap, as if he could anchor her to the present, even as her mind slipped backward into the past. Outside, the storm was spent, but the world still shimmered with the aftertaste of rain. The moonlight slipped between clouds, spilling silver puddles across the old wooden floorboards. Lauren's hands trembled as she picked up the first of the letters from the box. Old, yellowed, the blue ribbon trembling as she untied it. Titan watched her, his eyes wise and steady, ears flicking at each crackle of paper. She smiled at him, a small, grateful smile, and began to read aloud, voice soft but sure. September 21st, 1951. My dearest J.W., the nights grow longer, and the silence in this house grows thick. I think of you and Lillian every moment. Lauren paused, glancing at Titan. His tail thumped once in the silence. She felt something like courage return. He was listening. He was here. As she read, each letter unfolded like a map of hidden love and heartbreak. Grace wrote of longing for J.W., for the man she loved who was always leaving for something larger than himself. War, duty, ghosts of his own. She wrote of their little girl, Lillian, whose laughter filled the house until it didn't, whose absence made every room feel endless. There were hints, scattered through the lines, of a pain so deep it couldn't be named. Lauren's own eyes stung. She looked at Titan, felt his head warm on her knee, and kept reading, her voice steady even as her heart lurched. One letter, written in shaky script, caught her breath. December 10th, 1952. They say time heals, but time only stretches the ache. The house is so quiet now. I see Lillian everywhere. In the garden, on the stairs, even in the way Duke sits at the window waiting for your truck in the drive. Lauren froze. She glanced down at Titan, studying the broad black muzzle, the intelligent brown eyes, the familiar markings on his paws. In the envelope, tucked beside the letter, was a faded black and white photo. A man in a military uniform, young and proud, crouched beside a German shepherd that could have been Titan's twin, right down to the speckled patch above the left eye. The dog wore a harness marked K9, Duke. Lauren's mind spun. Was Titan somehow connected to this past? Or was it just a trick of genetics? A coincidence that felt like fate? She stroked his ears. What do you think, boy? You ever feel like you've been here before? Titan looked up at her, and for just a moment, the world felt impossibly small and intimate. Just a girl, her dog, and the ghosts of everyone who had come before. Down the hall, Lauren could hear her mother moving about the kitchen. Plates clinked, cupboard doors opened and closed. It was the kind of routine that used to mean comfort, but now the sound seemed hollow, as if Evelyn was trying to fill a space that couldn't be filled. Titan gave a low, contented huff and pressed closer. Lauren felt the words bubbling up inside her. "It's not fair, you know," she whispered, careful not to let her voice carry. "Dad's gone, and now, all these secrets. I wish he'd told us. I wish I knew who these people were." Titan licked her hand, warm and steady. She wiped at her eyes and picked up another letter. This one was softer, the writing rounder and more hurried. April 5th, 1953. Duke is getting old. He waits by the door for you every day. I wish you could see how gentle he is with Lillian's toys, how he noses her favorite doll into the sunlight. Lauren let out a shaky breath. The pain in Grace's words was raw. Loss that never healed. Love that endured beyond reason. Downstairs, Evelyn moved more slowly, footsteps heavy. Lauren imagined her sitting at the kitchen table holding the dog tag, staring into the past, searching for answers. She wished she could go to her mother, but didn't know how to start. The grief between them was like a wall, sometimes thin as tissue, sometimes thick as stone. Lauren folded the letters back into the box, her mind swirling with questions. Who was J.W.? Was he a stranger or family? Why did Dad keep all this hidden? And why did Titan, of all dogs, seem so drawn to it? Later, she found Evelyn in the kitchen, the light overhead harsh and too bright. Evelyn sat, elbows on the table, the dog tag spinning slowly in her fingers. She looked up, eyes red but dry. For a moment, Lauren saw the woman her mother had been before loss carved her hollow. The one who sang to her as a child, who knew how to make every wound feel smaller. Evelyn spoke first, voice brittle. He never told me. Not about this. Not about any of it. She gestured to the dog tag, the old letters Lauren held. Do you think he was ashamed? Or just protecting us? Lauren hesitated. I don't know, Mom. Maybe both. Evelyn laughed, a sad, quiet sound. I keep thinking I should be angry, but I just feel tired, like there's a part of him I'll never understand. They sat in silence for a moment, broken only by Titan's steady breathing as he settled under the table. Lauren slid the box onto the table. There's a photo, Mom, of a dog that looks exactly like Titan. And these letters, they talk about a little girl, Lillian, and J.W. I think we have to figure out who they are. Evelyn ran a hand through her hair. What if we don't like what we find? Lauren met her gaze. What if we need to find it anyway? Titan rested his head on Lauren's foot, a gentle weight that said, "I'm here, whatever comes." That night, Lauren lay awake long after the house went quiet. The letters replayed in her mind, fragments and half-answers swimming in the dark. Titan curled close against her side, warmth radiating through the thin blanket. She pressed the photo to her chest and stared at the ceiling, listening to the whisper of wind through the trees. Maybe the past wasn't finished with them yet. Maybe Titan knew things she could never prove, memories buried in bone and blood, in the spaces between thunder and silence. Before she drifted off to sleep, Lauren whispered into Titan's fur, a promise only he would ever hear. "We'll find out. For them, for Dad, for all of us." Titan shifted, pressing his nose to her cheek, and Lauren finally let herself cry, safe in the company of the only soul in the house who never needed her to explain. The days that followed the discovery of the letters seemed to slow, stretching into a gray limbo where time felt unmeasured. Each hour in the Mitchell farmhouse carried the heaviness of unsaid words, the silence between Lauren and Evelyn deepening, becoming almost tangible. It was as if the ghosts uncovered behind the mirror had seeped into every floorboard and windowsill, watching, waiting for someone to speak their names. Lauren noticed the subtle changes first. Titan's restlessness, the way he lingered in doorways, his nose twitching as he searched for something just beyond the realm of scent. He was still her anchor, the steadfast companion who slept pressed close at her side each night. But he had become more alert, more attentive to the unseen. Evelyn, on the other hand, receded further into herself. She moved through the house as if underwater, her face drawn, eyes red-rimmed but dry. She no longer tried to fill the quiet with conversation or chores. Instead, she spent long evenings sitting at the dining table, the dog tag in one hand, her gaze fixed on a spot just past Lauren's shoulder, as if she could see her husband standing there silent, refusing to explain. On the third morning after their discovery, Lauren wandered down the overgrown path that led to the creek behind the house. Titan padded beside her, his black and tan fur dusted with dew, his tail swishing in the long grass. The air was crisp, the late summer sun not yet burning away the mist that clung to the fields. Lauren paused at the edge of the water, picking up a smooth stone and skimming it across the surface. Titan watched, ears perked, head cocked, as if considering whether to chase the ripples. Lauren glanced around to be sure they were alone, then knelt, pressing her forehead against Titan's. She whispered into the soft fur at his neck. "Sometimes I'm afraid I'll just disappear, like Dad, like Lillian, like everyone in those letters." Titan licked her cheek, a simple, unspoken reassurance. She knew he didn't understand her words, but he felt her heart, her trembling hands, the uncertainty that haunted her every day since her father's death. The water babbled quietly over the stones, a soothing backdrop. Lauren spoke again, voice barely louder than the wind. "I miss when everything was simple, when Mom would laugh and Dad would be out in the fields with you, throwing sticks. Now it's all heavy. I keep thinking, what if I forget what it was like? What if one day I wake up and I can't remember his voice?" Her throat closed up. Titan nudged her hand, insistent, and she managed a shaky smile. "You remember, don't you, boy?" She watched Titan sniff the air, then trot toward the old willow tree where she and her dad used to sit on hot afternoons, sharing lemonade and stories. The dog pawed at the ground near the roots, looking up at Lauren expectantly. She went to him, curiosity piqued. Titan began digging, claws flinging earth aside until his nose bumped against something hard. Lauren knelt beside him and brushed dirt away to reveal a rusted toy truck, one she hadn't seen since she was small. The sight of it, a relic from her own childhood, made her heart ache and swell all at once. "Good boy, Titan," she murmured, cradling the truck in her hands. "You always know when I need a sign." Later that afternoon, Lauren found Evelyn in the living room, sitting in the faded blue armchair by the window, lost in thought. The dog tag hung from her fingers, swinging gently like a pendulum marking time. Lauren hesitated in the doorway, unsure if she was welcome. Evelyn didn't look up. Her voice was flat, distant. "Did you find anything new with Titan today?" Lauren stepped into the room, toying with the truck in her hands. "He dug up this. Remember when Dad gave it to me for my birthday?" Evelyn stared at the toy for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded. "He spent hours fixing it up. Said he wanted you to have something that would last longer than anything plastic from the store." A silence fell between them, thick with everything left unsaid. Lauren shifted, summoning her courage. "Mom, do you think Dad meant for us to find the letters? The box? Or did he want it all to stay hidden?" Evelyn finally met her daughter's gaze, pain flickering in her eyes. "I've been trying to figure that out. Your father was good at holding on to things, especially secrets. Maybe he wanted to protect us from the past. Or maybe he hoped we'd understand one day why he couldn't talk about it." She paused, pressing the dog tag into her palm so hard her knuckles went white. "I keep asking myself if I missed the signs, if there were moments when he tried to tell me, but I wasn't ready to listen." Lauren sat down at her mother's feet, resting her head against Evelyn's knee. Titan lay beside them, a living bridge between two islands of grief. "I don't think he wanted to hurt us," Lauren said softly. "Maybe he just didn't know how to say goodbye. Or maybe he thought it was better to let sleeping ghosts lie." Evelyn's hand found Lauren's hair, stroking it gently, an old, familiar comfort. "He loved you. That much I never doubted." For a while they just sat there, breathing together, Titan's rhythmic sighs grounding them. The house creaked, but the silence felt different, less like a wait, more like a pause before something new. That evening, as dusk settled, Titan began acting strange again. He prowled through the house, nose to the floor, moving from room to room with restless urgency. Lauren followed him as he paused at the foot of the stairs, then veered sharply to the hall closet beneath the staircase, a spot she'd never paid much attention to. He pawed at the door, whining. Lauren opened it, revealing a jumble of old coats and boots. Titan nosed aside a pair of cracked galoshes, then began sniffing along the baseboards. Lauren reached in and pushed aside a dusty box of holiday decorations. Behind it, the wood sounded hollow. She tapped it. Sure enough, it echoed. Evelyn appeared at the top of the stairs, drawn by the commotion. "What is it?" Lauren's pulse raced. "I think Titan found something." With trembling hands, Lauren pried at the baseboard until a small section came loose, revealing a narrow cavity stuffed with brittle, crumbling papers and a faded photograph. She pulled them out, heart in her throat. Evelyn descended, her curiosity outweighing her wariness. She knelt beside Lauren, studying the old photograph. A group of soldiers, one of whom wore a K9 harness and stood beside a young German shepherd with hauntingly familiar eyes. Lauren looked at her mother. "It's JW and Duke. And maybe there's more." Evelyn's face softened. "Titan's trying to tell us something, Lauren. Maybe it's time we start listening." As night crept in and the house settled around them, Lauren felt a strange sense of hope. The weight of silence wasn't gone, but it was shifting, becoming something they could share, something they could face together, with Titan leading the way. It was a Wednesday afternoon when the story took its next unexpected turn. The sky was overcast, threatening rain that never seemed to come, just a heavy stillness pressing down on the farmhouse. Lauren was in the kitchen, trying to distract herself by baking banana bread, the sweet smell mixing with the scent of wet grass drifting through an open window. Titan lay sprawled at her feet, occasionally lifting his head to watch her move around the room. Evelyn sat at the table, sorting through the old letters and photographs they had uncovered, piecing together a family tree that seemed to have roots in shadow. She moved slowly, her gestures careful, as if afraid the past might crumble in her hands. A sharp knock at the front door startled them both. Titan leapt to his feet, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Lauren wiped her hands on her jeans and glanced at her mother, who was already standing, brow furrowed. Strangers rarely came this far down the gravel road, especially unannounced. Evelyn hesitated, then moved toward the door. Titan pressed close at her hip, a living shield. Lauren followed, heart thumping with a strange mix of fear and curiosity. When Evelyn opened the door, the man standing on the porch looked out of place, like a piece of a story that had been forgotten, only now returning to be read. He was older, his frame stooped but solid, hair silvered at the temples, eyes the faded blue of old denim. He wore a battered army jacket, the patches worn smooth, a cap pulled low over his brow. For a moment, no one spoke. The stranger's gaze flickered from Evelyn to Lauren, then to Titan, who stood rigid, tail high, silent but alert. "Afternoon, ma'am," the man said, voice rough with age but carrying a quiet authority. "Sorry to show up out of nowhere. Name's Harold Jennings." He paused, as if waiting for recognition. "I served with a man named J.W. years back. Got word that Frank Mitchell passed recently. I saw the obituary. Thought maybe I could pay my respects." Evelyn tensed, uncertain, shielding Lauren slightly with her body. "We didn't know anyone by those initials, not really. My husband never talked much about the army. But you came a long way for a visit." Harold's eyes lingered on Titan, softening just a little. "Dogs remember more than folks do sometimes. That yours?" Lauren nodded. "His name's Titan." Harold smiled, a tired, sad smile. "Looks just like Duke did. That was J.W.'s dog back in Vietnam. Never saw a pair more loyal except maybe you two." He met Lauren's gaze, searching. "I'm sorry if I'm intruding, but sometimes the past doesn't let go easy." Evelyn glanced at Lauren, silently weighing the risk. Titan stood unmoving, a silent sentinel. Finally, Evelyn stepped aside. "Come in, Mr. Jennings. We've got questions, too." The living room was brighter than usual, sunlight slanting through the windows, dust motes spinning in the air. Harold eased into the armchair by the fireplace, removing his cap and smoothing his hair. His hands trembled just a bit as he settled himself. Evelyn offered him coffee, but he waved it off. "Never could drink the stuff. Nerves, I suppose." Lauren watched him, curiosity battling suspicion. "How did you know my dad?" Harold sighed, looking out the window for a long moment before answering. "Frank and I met in basic. He was a good man, quiet, thoughtful, the kind of fella who'd carry other people's burdens without ever complaining. We lost touch after the war, but, well, some wounds don't heal easy. I heard he moved out here, started a family. Never figured I'd be on this porch." He pulled a worn envelope from his jacket pocket and set it on the table. "Found this in an old box. It's addressed to whoever finds the truth. Written by J.W. himself." He hesitated, then added, "If you're reading this, you've found the truth. Forgive me for what I could not say." Lauren's fingers itched to reach for the letter, but she waited as Evelyn opened it, unfolding the brittle paper. The words inside were shaky but legible, a confession of secrets, regrets, and love too big for one life to hold. Evelyn read aloud, her voice trembling. If you're reading this, I suppose I've failed at keeping the past where it belongs. I tried to protect you all from the weight of it, but some stories refuse to stay buried. If Titan, or whoever leads you here, has found this, then you deserve the truth. Look for Lillian in the pines. Lauren's breath caught. Lillian, that's the little girl from the letters. Harold nodded, eyes shadowed. J.W. lost his daughter, lost a piece of himself too. He and Duke used to wander these woods for hours, searching, as if she might come back. When I saw the news about your father, I wondered if the past had finally caught up to him. Evelyn clutched the letter, knuckles white. There's a grave out there, isn't there? In the woods. Harold shrugged, shoulders heavy. Never saw it myself, but I heard the stories. Some things a man can't bring himself to say out loud, even to those he loves most. If you want answers, follow the dog. Trust his instincts. Titan, who had been watching Harold intently, let out a soft whine and pressed his nose against Lauren's hand. She stroked his ears, feeling the quiet urgency radiating from him. For the first time in days, she sensed hope threaded through her fear, a purpose, a path forward. Harold stood, the conversation weighing on him. I won't keep you, just be gentle with what you find. The past has teeth. He glanced at Titan, then at Lauren. Good luck, kid. Lauren walked Harold to the door. As he stepped out onto the porch, he paused, looking back at her. You're braver than you think, and so is your mom. Don't let the silence win. She nodded, watching as the old soldier made his way down the gravel drive, the shadows of the pines swallowing him up. Inside, Evelyn held the letter to her chest, her eyes shining with tears. We have to go, Lauren, tonight. If there's a grave out there, if there's anything of Lillian left, she deserves to be remembered. Lauren nodded, determination flaring in her chest. We'll follow Titan. He knows the way. As dusk fell, Titan paced the doorway, impatient, ready. The mystery that had haunted their home for generations was waiting out there in the dark. And for the first time, Lauren felt ready to face it. Not alone, but side by side with her mother and the dog, who had always seen more than anyone else. The pines loomed on the horizon, tall and silent. Somewhere beneath their tangled roots, the answer waited. Titan barked once, sharp and clear, and Lauren knew, without doubt, that they would not turn back. Night descended on the old Mitchell farmhouse with a hush that pressed against the windows, heavy and absolute. The air was thick with anticipation and something like fear. A fear Lauren could taste at the back of her throat as she laced up her boots in the mudroom. Her hands shook, but she was determined. Evelyn was quieter than usual, moving with a tense purpose, gathering her raincoat and flashlight, double-checking the batteries with trembling fingers. Titan paced at the door, tail up, body quivering with focus. He kept looking back at Lauren as if urging her to hurry. Lauren grabbed the dog's collar, meeting his steady gaze. We're ready, boy. Show us the way. Evelyn's voice was little more than a whisper. Do you think it's safe? She looked at the dark stretch of forest beyond the porch, shadows stretching into the unknown. There was a time when she would have laughed at the idea of following a dog into the woods after midnight. But loss had a way of rewriting the rules. Lauren squeezed her mother's hand. We need to know, Mom. I think Dad would want us to find the truth, even if it hurts. Evelyn hesitated, then nodded, a flash of resolve lighting her tired eyes. All right, let's do this. Thunder rumbled far in the distance, a memory from the storm days before. The woods glistened, still damp from yesterday's rain, every leaf shining in the beam of their flashlights. The air hummed with the sound of cicadas and something more, a waiting stillness, like the forest was holding its breath. Titan led the way, moving confidently along the narrow, overgrown path that wound behind the barn and down toward the tree line. Lauren followed, her mother right behind, both their flashlight beams slicing through the darkness, sometimes catching Titan's glowing eyes as he looked back to make sure they kept up. As they plunged deeper into the woods, the familiar sounds of the farmhouse faded, replaced by the rustle of branches overhead and the crunch of leaves underfoot. Shadows seemed to flicker at the edge of their vision, and Lauren's heart hammered in her chest with every snap of a twig. She kept close to Titan, trusting his instinct. He moved with a certainty that made Lauren feel, for the first time in days, that maybe they were exactly where they were supposed to be. He paused only once, nose lifted, catching the scent of something on the wind, then pressed forward, leading them into the deepest part of the forest. Behind her, Evelyn stumbled, nearly twisting her ankle on a mossy root. Lauren turned, steadying her. "You okay?" she whispered, her voice swallowed by the trees. Evelyn nodded, forcing a smile. "I'm fine, just a little spooked, that's all." Her breath came out in shaky puffs, her grip on the flashlight white-knuckled. Titan pressed on, unbothered, nose low, tail high, a dog on a mission. The woods closed in, the trees older and thicker here, branches arching overhead until the sky was nothing but a dark quilt dotted with stars. Suddenly, Titan stopped, his ears pricked, body rigid. He sniffed the air, let out a single low bark, then veered off the path, nosing through a tangle of blackberry brambles. Lauren's pulse jumped as she followed, pushing aside thorns that snagged her jacket. Evelyn hesitated, glancing back toward the faint glow of the farmhouse lights, then steeled herself and plunged in after them. Titan barked again, sharper this time, digging at the soft earth beneath a stand of ancient pines. The flashlights swept across the forest floor, illuminating a patch of moss that looked strangely undisturbed compared to the wild tangle around it. Lauren dropped to her knees beside Titan, heart racing. She brushed aside the moss, her fingers trembling. The earth was looser here, damp and cool. As she dug, her hands brushed against something solid, wood, worn smooth by years underground. She glanced up at her mother, who was frozen, one hand pressed to her mouth. Evelyn knelt beside her, tears glinting in her eyes. "Is it?" Lauren nodded, swallowing hard. Together they cleared away the moss and soil, revealing a small, weathered grave marker, half buried, the letters barely visible in the flickering light. Lauren read aloud, her voice catching. "Lillian, 1945 to 1952. The name hung in the air, echoing in the silence that followed. Evelyn reached out, her hand trembling, and traced the letters with her fingertips. "She was just a child," she whispered, voice raw. "All this time she was here." Titan sat back on his haunches, tail curled around his feet, watching them with solemn eyes. Lauren looked at him, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "You found her, Titan. You brought us here." Evelyn wiped at her cheeks, struggling to regain control. "Your father must have known. He kept it all a secret. Maybe he thought it was better that way. Maybe he couldn't bear to talk about it." Her voice broke, and she pulled Lauren close, holding her tight in the shadow of the pines. They sat together for a long while, the woods silent but for the sound of their breathing and Titan's steady, reassuring presence. Lauren closed her eyes, feeling the weight of generations pressing down on her, but also a strange sense of peace. The secret had been brought to light. Lillian was no longer lost, no longer forgotten. After a while, Evelyn pulled back, wiping her tears. She looked at Lauren, then at the grave marker. "We have to make this right. She deserves better than to be hidden away out here." Lauren nodded. "We'll tell the story. We'll give her a name again." Titan rose, tail wagging softly, as if he understood that his job was done. He nudged Lauren's hand, his eyes gentle and wise. As they made their way back through the woods, the path felt different. Lighter somehow. The burden of the secret wasn't gone, but it had shifted. They carried it together now, and the darkness didn't seem quite as thick. At the edge of the forest, Lauren paused, turning to look back at the pines one last time. She whispered a promise into the night. "You're not alone anymore, Lillian. We remember you." And with Titan leading the way, she and her mother walked home, the first rays of dawn just beginning to silver the horizon. The discovery of Lillian's grave set off a chain of events that neither Lauren nor Evelyn could have anticipated. By the next morning, word had started to trickle through the small Asheville community. A dog had led a grieving family to an unmarked grave hidden for decades among the pines. News traveled fast in small towns, but this story traveled faster. It seemed that every neighbor, every distant cousin, every person who'd ever lost someone, was suddenly drawn to the Mitchell farmhouse, hungry for answers, for connection, or just to witness a moment when the past refused to stay buried. It began with a phone call. Mrs. Wilkins, who ran the local paper, left a message on the old answering machine. "Lauren, Evelyn, so sorry for your loss, and so amazed by your courage. I'd love to speak with you about what happened. This is, well, it's extraordinary." Lauren wasn't sure she was ready for extraordinary. She wasn't sure she was ready for any of it. But when she saw Titan stretched out in the sunlight by the back porch, his tail thumping softly as a pair of neighbor kids approached the fence, she realized that the story had already grown bigger than her family. By noon, a handful of cars had gathered at the edge of the property. Some brought flowers. Others simply brought themselves, standing quietly at a distance, hats in hand. Lauren watched through the kitchen window, feeling both exposed and oddly comforted. Titan, sensing her tension, stuck close to her side, accepting pets and scratches from strangers with patient dignity. Inside, Evelyn moved with new energy. She gathered the old letters, photographs, and mementos, organizing them on the kitchen table. The pain in her face had softened, replaced by a kind of resolute pride. When a local journalist knocked, nervous, almost apologetic, Evelyn invited her in without hesitation. Titan watched the stranger carefully, positioning himself between the family and the newcomer. But when Lauren knelt and hugged his neck, he relaxed, settling at her feet as the questions began. "How did you find the grave?" the reporter asked, voice gentle. "Was it really your dog who led you there?" Lauren nodded, glancing at Titan. "He just knew. He wouldn't stop until we followed him." She paused, searching for words. "I think he felt something we couldn't see. Maybe it was the sadness in the house, or maybe it was something more." The journalist listened intently, scribbling notes. "And the grave, Lillian. Do you know who she was?" Evelyn answered, her voice steady. "We found her name in old letters, and in a photograph with J.W., the man my husband must have known somehow. We don't have all the answers, but we know she was loved. We want her to be remembered." As the interview ended, Lauren found herself outside, watching Titan run with the neighbor kids along the fence line. For the first time in what felt like forever, She heard laughter in the yard. Children asked questions about the grave, about the letters, about whether Titan was a hero. Lauren knelt to their level, answering as honestly as she could. "Titan's just a good dog," she said. "But sometimes good dogs know what we need, even when we don't." Word spread quickly. Within days, a group of volunteers offered to help clear the area around Lillian's grave. Someone from the local museum called, asking if the family would consider donating the letters, photographs, and dog tag for a small exhibit about the town's hidden stories. Evelyn agreed, hoping it would help others remember the people who had come before. A simple wooden marker was placed at the grave's head, bearing Lillian's name, the dates, and a bouquet of wildflowers that never seemed to wilt. On the day of the memorial, the whole community came together. Lauren stood beside her mother, holding Titan's leash, as neighbors shared stories of loss, of love, of dogs who'd saved them in ways big and small. As the crowd lingered, an older man approached, eyes red-rimmed with memory. He introduced himself as Tom Granger, a cousin of Grace's, Lillian's mother. He brought with him an old photograph and a trembling voice. "My mother spoke of Lillian sometimes," he said. "She always said the little girl was too full of light for this world. I never knew what happened to her. Thank you for finding her. Thank you for remembering." Evelyn hugged Tom tightly, tears slipping down her cheeks. For a moment, the weight of all those years of silence and secrecy seemed to lift. Lauren watched, feeling something shift in her chest. Titan pressed against her leg, grounding her. In the following weeks, the farmhouse was rarely quiet. Letters arrived from strangers, some sharing their own stories of hidden graves and family secrets, others simply expressing gratitude for the courage it took to face the past. Titan became something of a local celebrity. People left treats and thank you notes tied to the fence. Children came by after school, hoping to see the brave dog who found Lillian. Despite the attention, Lauren sometimes felt overwhelmed. The world seemed too bright, too loud. She worried that Lillian's story would be twisted or forgotten, reduced to a headline or a passing curiosity. But every time those doubts crept in, Titan was there, a steady presence, reminding her of the bond they shared. When she sat on the porch swing, lost in thought, Titan would rest his head on her knee, his eyes wise and calm. She'd stroke his ears, breathing in the simple, grounding scent of his fur, letting her anxiety fade. Inside, Evelyn began piecing together a family tree, filling in the blanks with names, dates, and scraps of memory. She spent hours on the phone with distant relatives, her voice growing stronger each day. The pain of loss remained, but it was no longer a wound. It was a scar, proof that they had survived. One evening, after the crowds had gone and the house was quiet again, Lauren sat at the kitchen table, sorting through the last of the letters. She found one addressed simply to "My dearest." The handwriting was shaky, the paper brittle. She read it aloud, her voice echoing in the stillness. "If you find this, know that love does not die. It waits, buried like a seed, until someone is brave enough to dig it up. Lillian was the best of us. May she be remembered. Always." Lauren pressed the letter to her chest, tears slipping down her cheeks. Titan licked her hand, tail wagging gently. That night, as she drifted off to sleep, Lauren realized that grief didn't have to be the end of a story. Sometimes it was just the beginning of something new, a chance to remember, to heal, to love again. And through it all, Titan remained by her side, a silent witness, a bridge between the past and the future, a reminder that sometimes the truest stories were the ones that waited for us to be ready to listen. The weeks after the memorial for Lillian unfolded in a series of unexpected discoveries. As the leaves began to turn, painting the hills in fiery oranges and reds, Lauren, Evelyn, and Titan fell into a new rhythm, a kind of sacred ritual, searching for the missing pieces of their family's history, honoring both sorrow and resilience. It started innocently enough. Lauren was dusting the bookshelf in the upstairs hallway, the same place where the mirror had once hung. As she pulled down a stack of old cookbooks, something thudded behind the shelf. Titan, ever alert, bounded over, nose pressed to the floorboards. With some coaxing, Lauren shifted the shelf just enough to reveal a small, battered diary, its green cover faded almost to gray. She sat cross-legged on the landing, Titan curling against her as she flipped through the fragile pages. The handwriting was unmistakable, Grace's delicate script, swirling across the yellowed paper. It was a diary from the years after Lillian's passing, each entry full of longing, regret, and sometimes hope. Lauren read passages aloud to Titan, letting the words wash over her. September 12th. The world feels hollow without her laughter. But Duke is still here, gentle and patient, reminding me there is love left in this house. The echo of the past mingled with the present, filling the silent farmhouse with new meaning. That afternoon, Lauren brought the diary to her mother. Evelyn read in silence, eyes brimming, before setting the diary down and reaching for Lauren's hand. "All these years, I thought I knew what loss was," she said quietly. "But Grace's words, they remind me that love and pain are always tangled together." The discoveries didn't stop there. Each week, Titan led them to something new. A war medal tucked in an old jar in the attic, a photograph hidden beneath the loose floorboard in the parlor, a locket wedged behind the kitchen baseboard. Each artifact deepened their understanding, both of the family that came before and of their own bond. One rainy morning, while Evelyn sorted through a trunk of her late husband's things, Titan nosed at a loose panel in the floor. Lauren pried it open to find a faded letter written by J.W., the man whose secrets had rippled through generations. In it, he spoke of forgiveness, of the ache of losing a child, and of the hope that someone, someday, would remember Lillian and Duke with kindness. With every new revelation, Lauren and Evelyn found themselves talking more openly, raw but honest. Over coffee at dawn and by candlelight at night, they pieced together the story of a family marked by tragedy, yes, but also by endurance and love. Evelyn began to share stories from her own childhood, things she had buried deep. Her father's stern kindness, her mother's favorite song. Lauren, in turn, confessed her fears of being forgotten, of never understanding her father. The distance between mother and daughter softened, replaced by laughter, tears, and the healing kind of silence that needed no words. Meanwhile, the community's fascination with Titan only grew. Local teachers invited Lauren and Titan to speak at the elementary school, sharing the story of the dog who found a forgotten grave and brought a family together. Titan, gentle and composed, with his wise eyes and stately posture, became a symbol of hope for children who had lost parents or grandparents, for anyone who wondered if love could survive the hardest things. At first, Lauren was nervous, unsure what to say to a room full of fidgety children. But as she watched Titan calmly lay his head in a shy girl's lap, she realized her story didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to be true. "My dog Titan taught me that sometimes the answers are hiding right where we're afraid to look," Lauren told them. "He showed me that the past matters, but it's what we do with it that counts." The children listened in rapt silence, many reaching out to touch Titan's fur, their eyes shining. Teachers took Lauren aside afterward, thanking her for her honesty and courage. More than once, parents called the farmhouse, asking if Lauren and Titan could visit their grieving child, just to offer a little comfort. Word reached the local museum, which decided to dedicate a small exhibit to Lillian's story. They displayed the letters, photographs, diary, and even the battered dog tag, items that had once been hidden out of shame, now brought into the light for everyone to honor. The exhibit became a gathering place, a quiet corner where people could share their own stories of loss and healing. Evelyn and Lauren were invited to speak at the exhibit's opening. Evelyn's voice trembled as she thanked the crowd. "I never imagined that our family's pain could inspire hope for others," she said. "But maybe that's the gift Lillian gave us, a reason to remember, to reach out, to heal together." The applause was warm, the sense of community palpable. As the evening wore on, Lauren caught her mother's eye and smiled, a real, easy smile, the kind she hadn't felt in a long time. Back at the farmhouse, the house felt lighter, less haunted. Lauren realized that the shadows had not disappeared. Instead, they had simply become a part of the story, no longer something to be feared or hidden away. She and Evelyn still missed her father, still mourned all they had lost. But now they did so together, their bond stronger for every secret they had brought into the open. In the evenings, Lauren would write in her journal, chronicling the discoveries and the lessons they'd learned. Titan, content and sleepy, would lie beside her, occasionally lifting his head as if listening to every word. Sometimes, Lauren would find herself reading aloud to him, letting her voice fill the quiet house with hope. Eventually, at Evelyn's urging, they compiled the letters, diaries, and photographs into a book, part memoir, part tribute, part invitation for others to unearth and honor their own hidden stories. They called it The Echoes We Follow, dedicating it to Lillian and to every soul who waits to be remembered. The book inspired others in the community to search their attics, closets, and family albums, uncovering their own lost histories. The Mitchell farmhouse became a place of gathering, neighbors stopping by not just to pet Titan or leave flowers at Lillian's grave, but to share laughter, tears, and a sense of belonging. Titan, now truly beloved by all, basked in the attention, especially from children who brought him treats and whispered their secrets into his fur. In his gentle presence, people found comfort and courage. And for Lauren, watching the house fill with light, voices, and possibility, there was a sense of peace she'd never expected. She realized that healing didn't mean forgetting the pain or erasing the scars. It meant honoring every part of the journey, letting the past shape them, yes, but refusing to let it define their future. The first hints of autumn gold began to settle across the hills when Lauren realized just how much had changed. The farmhouse, once heavy with loss and silence, now felt alive, a place where laughter rang in the kitchen and visitors came and went, sharing stories, tears, and new beginnings. Titan, older and a little grayer around the muzzle, spent his afternoons in the sun beside Lillian's restored grave, his presence a living tribute to the journey they had taken together. Lauren liked to sit nearby, journal in hand, letting the warm light spill over the pages as she tried to capture what they'd learned. Sometimes Evelyn joined her, sometimes a neighbor or a friend. But often it was just her and Titan, a quiet companionship that needed no words. As the seasons shifted, Lauren found herself reflecting on everything they had unearthed, the pain and secrets, the surprising moments of hope, the way one determined dog had cracked open a closed heart and brought an entire community together. She realized the journey wasn't just about finding Lillian or understanding her father's hidden grief. It was about learning how to remember, truly remember, without letting the past bury you alive. On a cool Saturday afternoon, The town hosted its annual harvest festival. The air was filled with the scent of cinnamon and apples, the sounds of children laughing and music drifting from a makeshift stage. For the first time, Evelyn had agreed to speak, sharing their story with anyone who wanted to listen. Lauren watched her mother with a kind of awe, noticing how her voice quivered only slightly as she described Titan's intuition, the secrets uncovered, and the unexpected healing that followed. Evelyn paused, emotion thick in her throat. I thought that forgetting would be the only way to move on. But what I've learned is that healing isn't about erasing pain. It's about finding the courage to face it, together. Titan taught us to listen to the quietest voices, to follow even when the path seemed lost. And because of that, we remember not only Lillian, but everyone who came before. The crowd was silent, many wiping tears from their cheeks. Lauren felt a swell of pride for her mother, and for the small part she herself had played in bringing these hidden stories into the light. Afterward, Lauren wandered the festival grounds. She stopped by the children's area where Titan was surrounded by giggling kids who stroked his fur and told him their secrets. Lauren knelt beside a little boy who was crying quietly, clutching a faded photograph. "My grandpa died last spring," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Sometimes I think I hear him in the garden, but nobody believes me." Lauren smiled softly, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You know, when we lose someone, it can feel like they're gone forever. But sometimes, if you listen with your heart, you'll find they're still with you, in memories, in stories, in the things that make you smile or cry. Titan taught me that." The boy looked at Titan, then back at Lauren. "Do you think he misses people too?" Lauren nodded. "I think dogs remember in their own way. They love us, and when we're sad, they stay close because that's how they show they care." He hugged Titan, burying his face in the dog's warm fur, and Lauren felt her own eyes sting with unshed tears. As the festival wound down, Evelyn joined Lauren beneath a canopy of golden leaves. She slipped her arm around her daughter's shoulders, her face glowing with a peace Lauren hadn't seen in years. "I'm proud of you," Evelyn said softly. "You never gave up. You made sure Lillian was remembered." Lauren shook her head, smiling through tears. "It was Titan, really. He was the one who showed us where to look. He never gave up on us." Evelyn's voice trembled. "I think your father would have been proud too. Maybe he carried the past alone because he thought it would protect us. But maybe he hoped we'd find our way to the truth together someday." Lauren opened her journal and read aloud one of her recent entries, her voice clear. "Remembrance is a gift, not a weight. To remember is to honor, to heal, to carry forward what matters most. The past doesn't have to define us, but if we listen, it will teach us how to be more compassionate, more courageous, more whole." Evelyn wiped a tear from her cheek, pulling Lauren close. That evening, the family gathered in their kitchen with neighbors and friends, sharing homemade bread and apple cider, swapping stories as the fire crackled in the hearth. There was laughter, but also the kind of gentle quiet that comes from being truly seen and understood. The house, once haunted by secrets, had become a sanctuary, a place where memory was honored and pain was met with kindness. Later, Lauren sat with Titan by Lillian's grave, her thoughts drifting. She remembered the first night Titan had pawed at the mirror, how scared she'd been, how uncertain. Now, looking at the freshly carved stone and the wildflowers Evelyn had planted, she understood what she'd been searching for. Not just answers, but connection. Titan shifted beside her, his eyes bright even as the fur around his muzzle grew whiter. Lauren leaned against him, her voice soft. You did good, old boy. You brought us home." As darkness fell, fireflies danced over the grass, their lights flickering like the pulse of distant stars. Lauren closed her eyes, feeling the gentle breeze, the earth beneath her, Titan's warmth. In that moment, she knew the lesson was simple, yet profound. Family wasn't just blood. It was loyalty, shared stories, the courage to face the hardest truths together. Healing meant letting the past shape you, but not letting it hold you captive. Remembrance was a gift, and Titan, in his simple, steadfast way, had given it to them all. When Lauren finally stood to go inside, Titan lingered by the grave for a moment longer, nose lifted to the night air, as if saying goodbye. Not just to Lillian, but to all the lost and forgotten who now, at last, were remembered. And in the quiet that followed, Lauren knew some stories never truly end. They live on in the hearts of those brave enough to listen. 1 year later, the Mitchell farmhouse was a place transformed. Spring had returned in earnest, draping the world in green and gold, wildflowers blooming thick and bright around the old pines where Lillian's grave now rested beneath a sturdy, lovingly carved stone. The harshness of loss had softened, replaced by something gentler, a hope rooted in remembrance and shared stories. On the anniversary of the day they'd found the grave, Lauren and Evelyn invited everyone who had walked some part of the journey with them. Friends, neighbors, teachers, even local reporters gathered in the yard, bearing food, armfuls of wildflowers, photographs, and old letters discovered in attics after hearing the Mitchells' story. The gathering became more than just a memorial. It was a celebration of lives once hidden, now cherished, of grief made bearable by love and community. The afternoon was bright, the air soft with the promise of summer. Titan, now gray-muzzled and a little slower on his feet, lay in the grass under the oldest pine, head lifted, eyes watchful as children darted around him, laughing and weaving chains of daisies. He'd become not just the family's loyal friend, but a symbol for everyone, of healing, intuition, and the quiet heroism found in everyday acts of devotion. Evelyn moved through the crowd, her posture open and light. She paused at the memorial stone, kneeling to place a fresh wreath of wild daisies, her voice low as she whispered, "Thank you, Lillian. Thank you for leading us home." For a long moment, she simply rested her palm on the stone, eyes closed, letting herself feel the peace that had once seemed impossible. Lauren, carrying a slim hardcover book, joined her mother at the grave. Together they stood in front of the gathered crowd. The sun filtered through the pine needles, dappling them in gold and green. Lauren's voice was steady as she opened the book, the collection of letters, diary entries, and reflections that she and Evelyn had compiled. "We called it The Echoes We Follow," Lauren said, her voice carrying over the hush, "because we learned, together, that the past isn't something to run from, it's something to honor. And the ones who came before us, whether they are family by blood or by heart, shape the story we're living right now." She read a passage from the final page, her words resonating with everyone present. Sometimes, the things we find in the quiet corners of our homes are not just memories, but invitations. To listen, to remember, to become part of something bigger than ourselves. Healing comes not by forgetting, but by honoring what was and sharing that gift with others. As Lauren finished, the crowd was silent for a long, respectful moment. Then someone began to clap, and soon the applause rose, warm and sincere, wrapping around Lauren and Evelyn like a long overdue embrace. As the day unfolded, laughter and conversation filled the yard. People shared stories of their own. A grandfather's pocket watch found after decades, a box of letters written during wartime, a childhood friend who disappeared but was now remembered through a faded photograph. Each tale became part of a tapestry, threads weaving together grief, joy, longing, and gratitude. Children circled around Titan, giving him belly rubs and sneaking him bits of their sandwiches. He was gentle with the youngest, letting toddlers lean against his side, as if he understood that his job now was simply to be present. He'd earned a place not just in the Mitchell family, but in the hearts of everyone who heard his story. Evelyn found herself speaking with a local teacher who said, "You know, since the museum opened the Lillian exhibit, my students have started asking more about their own families. They go home and talk to their grandparents. They want to understand where they came from." Evelyn smiled, wiping away a tear. That's all we ever wanted, for no one to be forgotten, for every story to matter. As evening settled, the last golden light slipping through the pines, the community gathered around the grave for a moment of quiet. Lauren knelt to place a hand on Titan's head. "Thank you, old friend," she whispered, "for every path you showed us, every secret you helped us find." Evelyn stood beside her, then spoke to those gathered. "Grief doesn't end, but it changes shape. Our memories are not burdens, but bridges, to each other, to those we've lost, to hope for the future." Lauren lifted her face, her eyes bright. The past is never truly lost, not as long as we're willing to listen, to search, and to honor those who came before. She glanced at the children, the neighbors, the old and the young, each touched in some way by the journey they'd shared. As dusk fell, the group drifted back toward the house, conversations soft and full of promise. A few children lingered by Titan, one little girl whispering, "I hope I can be as brave as you one day." Titan thumped his tail, eyes shining with gentle wisdom. Later, as the moon rose and stars blinked awake, Lauren sat on the porch, journal in her lap. She wrote not just for herself now, but for everyone who'd found comfort in the story that began with a storm and a frightened dog pawing at a mirror. She wrote for the hidden sorrows, the secret hopes, and the healing found in connection. In the closing pages of her book, Lauren included a simple call to action. Go home and listen to the walls, the attics, the photo albums in your life. Ask questions, follow the quiet clues, and when you find a story, no matter how small, honor it. Share it. Let it remind you that you are part of a living, breathing tapestry. The stories waiting to be found are not just in your house, but in your heart. She closed her journal, looking out across the yard. Titan lay in the grass, his eyes reflecting the stars as children played around him, living bridges between memory and hope. Lauren smiled, knowing that the story would ripple outward long after the day was done. And as she whispered goodnight to Titan, to Lillian, to the father she missed and the mother she'd rediscovered, she felt a peace so deep it needed no words. The past, she realized, was never truly gone. It was always there, a gentle echo beneath the pines, waiting for someone brave enough to listen.